Welcome back. Monday edition of Birds 365. Kind of exciting. April 15th, which is tax day. Not that part of it is exciting, but first day of OTAs. My buddy Jeff Kerr at Jeff Kerr CBS steps in. Jeff, what are you doing to celebrate day one of OTAs? You got some meetings scheduled, some voluntary workouts, anything, some rehab maybe?
Well, if I'm the Eagles, I'm getting my 2 hours of lifting in. I know that. That's what I would be doing on a day like today. Honestly, though, if I was an NFL player, I think I'd be excited because you're getting the on-field workouts, and that's what I enjoy about covering the league. That's what I think I would enjoy as a player.
Well, no on field just yet. You got to wait for phase two. But
Well, you can throw the receivers, right? I thought.
yeah, you can go out if you're a quarterback. I don't know. You can throw the football. They're very strict with phase one. You can have some meetings. You can get, and by the way, that's important because a lot of new coaches, especially on the defensive side, so start to get to learn about Vic Fangio and company. Offensively, Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier, a lot of more commonality than I would have thought, Jeff, on the offensive side of the coaching staff. But defensively, a lot of new names.
A lot, yeah. I mean, Vic Fangio is obviously the biggest one. John, of the position coaches that changed, what do you think is going to have the biggest impact? Do you think it'll be in the secondary, or are you thinking?
Well, it better be Doug Nussmeier. It better be the quarterback. It better be the quarterback coach because, the Eagles, if they're going to be contender, Jalen Hurts has got to get closer to what he was in 2022 than 2023. Defensively, I guess I would say position coach wise, you have to say Clint Hurt, right? Defensive line from the perspective of that's the most talented group. So to me, we're back in the Jim Schwartz days, and the engine of your defense better be that defensive front. So
And he was a former defensive coordinator. That was one of the hires I was like, oh, okay. Like Vic was able to get this guy in here, but I agree. I harped on this on WIP yesterday. I'm still going to harp on it. I'm still upset this team traded Hassan Reddick. I feel like you created a need you didn't have to create with a guy like that.
well, I think Howie's betting on Nolan Smith, man. I think everybody turned the page. Not everybody. I say that too often, but a lot of people turn the page on Nolan Smith. And Jeff, you know how this league works. If you take somebody in the first round, you're not going to close the book on them after 1 year. And I don't know. I mean, to me, it came down. It was a very similar situation, Jeff, to last year with the defensive backs when the Eagles kind of went into it and said we can keep two of the three. So it was Slay, Bradbury, CJ Gardner Johnson. Then it went back and forth. If you remember, originally it was supposed to be CJ and Slay, and then it became CJ and Bradbury, and it eventually ended up as Bradbury and Slay being back. But now it's not apples to apples because the Eagles brought in Bryce Huff. But once they brought in Bryce Huff, it became, all right, we can keep two of the three. And Bryce Huff, Reddick, Josh Sweat. And it was just simpler to get Josh Sweat done. So I think if you look at the group as a whole, and Bryce Huff is going to be a good player. We'll see how good. Josh Sweat is a good player. He's got to, bounce back from that end of the season lull. But I think everybody on defense does. I find it ironic. I mean, Hassan didn't do anything in that final collapse either. So while it's fair to point it out with Josh, I think people give Hassan a little bit of a pass on that. And, let's be honest. If Howie gets it wrong with Nolan Smith, it's going to look bad. But you still have Brandon Graham. And that's pretty deep group if everything works out well.
I think that's ultimately why they did do it, John. There was just too many chefs in the kitchen, I guess, is the proper phrase for it. I mean, where are you going to get these guys playing time right now? Nolan Smith wouldn't play if Hassan Reddick was here. And I want to defend Josh Well in this too. Yeah, he didn't do anything at the end of last season, but if
Well, who did?
yeah, well, exactly. But if you look at Josh's history, he's actually one of the better pass rushers in the final third of the season in terms of sacks and in terms of pressures. If you go back to 2020, 2021, 2022, Josh Sweat's among the top 10 in sacks and pressures. So I'm going based off history. Josh Sweat, 2023 wasn't Josh Sweat. But yeah, again, you're right. Who did do anything on that defense? And that's where I go back to, if Nick wants to be lax on the players this year or change it around, he has every right to point at those games and say, well, I did this last year, and this is how you guys rewarded me.
Now, if draft night comes and we're inside 2 weeks for the draft, Jeff, and the Eagles.
By the way, can I just state I can't wait till the draft is over?
Oh, well, we all feel that way. Joe was asking me about mock drafts. How much do you hate mock drafts?
Hate them. Absolutely hate them. I hate
Yeah.
people. I just don't like them. I have to do one. I don't mind doing it, but I don't do any trades. Oh, how come you don't do trades? Because
Yeah.
I can't predict them, just like
Yeah.
I can't predict any of that. There's no inside information on this.
And no, it's exercise in futility, which people and they get so many fans get so worked up about it. Just go to the next mock draft if you don't like somebody's mock draft.
I actually tell people when I write, I'm like, look, I'm doing this based on what a team needs, what they might do, and it just kind of gives you a blueprint of where this guy might go. And I think people respect that.
Yeah. Educated guess is all it is. And yeah, I mean, I was telling Krause, I'm like, before free agency mock drafts, I mean, they're just ridiculous. Before you know what a team is going to do and you bring it up with the Eagles. Well, if you don't get Saquon Barkley, running back would be more relevant in the second and third round, but they got Saquon Barkley. So what does that say to your pre-mock draft? Same thing with CJ, Bryce Huff, and players like that. But what does it tell you if the Eagles do? And we were talking about sort of the cloud of prospects that might be there that the Eagles might be thinking about. And that's what I wrote about yesterday, Jeff, because they always have a cloud of guys that they would select. And, as they come off the board, like Devontae Smith is the perfect example of this. He was the last one of the cloud of 4. And then they move up if they can to try to get that player. Or if they can't, they'll try to move down. They've had more success moving up in recent years. If somebody like Latu, Chop Robinson at edge rusher is in their cloud of prospects at 22, and that's where it ends up, that kind of tells me something not as concrete on Nolan Smith and turns it more towards Hassan Reddick, and they really didn't want Hassan Reddick back. That's how it would shake out to me. How would it shake out to you?
Well, if Latu falls to 22, you get him. If he's around there, you get him. I feel that way with a couple of these edge rushers, but Latu's the one.
I'll throw out the medical people have to approve that as well. So that's always a concern.
You and I talked, 2 weeks ago about the medical people's misevaluation of a certain receiver. Yeah. And of course, they're not here anymore. So, you see how that could play.
But that's the whole point. And I was talking to Matt Manicherian about that, the former NFL scout with the Browns and the Saints. And Matt was talking about the process. And he said, man, after the college all-star games were pretty concrete from the personnel perspective. And you got an almost pristine board, and then the coaches come in, and then the medical people come in, and then even the owner can come in certain cities at certain times, and throws everything in an upheaval. If your medical people say, all right, there's concerns here, there's not much you can do as a personnel guy. You got to listen to them. You're not the expert. And by the way, not to defend the Eagles, but a lot of teams had concerns over DK Metcalf. It wasn't like the Eagles were the only team.
I know the Cardinals did. That's why
Yeah.
they didn't pick him. They took Andy Isabella because of that. But yeah,
Andy Isabella.
I don't even
Yeah,
know where I don't even know where Andy Isabella's at right now. I know he's on the Bills for a little bit.
He's bounced around. I don't know. Andy, let's look him up. Andy Isabella. Yeah, but that didn't work out. Now, if you talk about the Eagles' early 20s, recent history hasn't been great.
It's been cringe.
They made a mistake moving up for Andre Dillard. They didn't do a lot of homework on him, and they said, "Why is this guy? This guy's so talented." And he starts falling, and they go up to get him. That was a mistake.
They got lucky that Jordan Mailata was already in the pipeline, and they developed him.
Yeah, well, very lucky. Yeah. You know, you tend to forget those things when your 7th round pick turns into a $66 million left tackle. But the most notable, obviously, would be Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Now, there's a lot of pointing. It's like that Spider-Man meme. Supposedly, the personnel staff wanted Jefferson, and the coaching staff wanted Reagor, so they're blaming the coaches. Even if you want to go back to Marcus Smith, that was an example of, I think, the cloud of people, the cloud of prospects that year evaporated, and all of a sudden you're left with the bag and you can't trade down, and you got to make a selection, and you end up with a Marcus Smith, and that was 25, 26, somewhere in that range.
I thought he was 20. Was he 25 or was he 24? It's been a while.
I don't know.
23 might have been there. Either what?
That's been a while, but all right, let's look up Marcus Smith.
10 years, by the way.
26.
26, yeah.
So, that's later, but, it becomes more difficult as you get in the 20s for obvious reasons.
And this is where I will defend a team like the Eagles here when you're picking in the 20s. I always say there's probably, in real life, there's probably about 17 to 19 first-round picks, first-round picks.
Yeah, real. Well, Jody and I used to have that argument all the time. He hated when I would say that because, he's a literal guy, and he's like, there's 32 first-round picks. And I would try to explain, well, yes, from a literal standpoint, but from scouting standpoints, no, they don't think there's 32 guys worthy of being first-round picks.
And I'll be honest, John, there's going to be a guy that's going to be drafted in the top 5. I don't think is a first-round pick this year, and he's a quarterback.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, quarterbacks always get put. I assume you're talking about McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm just not. I don't get it.
No, I don't blame you. I mean, when it's a big, I've said it pretty consistently on McCarthy. It's a big red flag to me that, if he's obviously, we know quarterback is the most important position on the field. And if he's that type of player, you shouldn't be not throwing the football. You shouldn't be grounding him and in your most important game of the year, not allowing him to make an impact on the game. The only thing I would say to that in his defense would be, it is Jim Harbaugh. So there is that old school mentality, and maybe he does have this tremendous upside. I can tell you from the people I talked to, Jeff, I mean, from early in the process, they love that kid, and they say the ceiling is there.
But there's the ceiling there at 4 or 5.
Well, I think they think
that's my issue.
I think they think the ceiling is there, but is the floor good enough? We always talk about floor versus ceiling. If you're top 5, your floor should be pretty high. I think, I would stay away from them that high. But there's so many quarterback desperate teams. It starts with Minnesota and Denver. Minnesota will probably be the one that gets them, I would think. And that's a good spot. I mean, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, if he comes back from the ACL.
Line's starting to get a little better there.
Darisaul's a great tackle. O'Neill's a great tackle. The interior's kind of iffy, but
you can fix that.
yeah.
If you're developing guys like Darisaul, you can fix it.
Yeah. Well, they haven't been able to fix it for a long time, so I'm not going to go, that far. But I did see one executive told me that, and I said this last week on the show, and I forgot who told it to me, and I can't tell you. But I said, "Who's the second best quarterback?" Because I'm a Daniels guy. I'm a JD.
I'm a Daniels guy. Honestly, I'll just before you get to your point, John. To me, it's Williams, Daniels, and then I'm scared for the rest of them.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Now he told me, "Tell me who Minnesota picks," and he said that because of where the quarterback is going to land. So, in other words, situation, scheme. You have Kevin O'Connell. I just gave you all the skill position talent. So what he was saying is the quarterback that lands there will have the better opportunity than maybe if you go to Washington or New England or Denver, or at least, because you got to succeed pretty quickly. So I thought that was an interesting sentiment, but I also think you have to have the right guy. So for Washington, you have Cliff Kingsbury. To me, that's Jaden Daniels all over. If you're O'Connell, to me, he's got to get Drake May or JJ McCarthy because he's Sean McVay, Clint Kubiak, Shanahan, Kubiak, Gary Kubiak, not Clint, but Clint's, in that category.
Is Clint still there, isn't he?
No, he's he's with the Saints now.
That's right. That's right.
But everybody who plays that Shanahan Kubiak offense, needs that play action guy capable of dropping back. And to me, that's McCarthy or Drake May. And then who am I missing? Who's the other one? That's all four.
No. Those are the four that we think are going to go in the top 5, definitely the top 10.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Bo Nix or Penix being first round picks.
Yeah. I understand though if Penix goes because you're gonna run out of guys. So, and if you need one, then there are teams that need one. Like if Penix went to say the Raiders at 12, I think I'd live with it. I'll agree with it, but I think I'd live with it.
Well, yeah, and Denver's going to take a quarterback, and I don't mind getting the 5th-year option on a quarterback. At least, that's a position you should value that 5th-year option for. So, if even say Bo Nix, if somebody comes back in at 32 to take him there, I think that's smart because of that 5th-year option. But I wouldn't take him that high. But those guys just get pushed up the board. So I'm with you. So if we get back to the Eagles, Jeff, that means tackles are getting pushed down the board.
And this class, by the way, when I was
loaded.
I love it. It just convinces me more that the Eagles are going to take one of these guys.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine. If they stay at 22, it's hard to imagine that won't be the best player available. But they're not going to like all the tackles. They're going to like certain ones.
Do you think the kid from Washington they like?
I don't. I keep hearing Mims and Guyton. That's the two.
Guyton, I can see them drafted. And Guyton should be there at 22, by the way.
Yeah, and they're very Eaglesy picks. But my problem is I don't like the way those two project inside. And you have to start inside. I like the way Latham and the kid from Washington, they project better inside, but I don't know if the Eagles like that.
What about the guard from Oregon? Do you like him?
Yeah, he's fine. But you know who I like? Grant Barton. That's who I if the Eagles, if they can't get what they want or 22, make a targeted trade up, I trade down and take that kid. I trade down to 28, 29, and take Grant Barton. I think you have a day one starter at right guard and you're off and running. That's what I would do if I were the Eagles. Now, would they take an interior lineman in the first round?
They've done it.
Maybe, but yeah, it hasn't. It's been a while. But Danny Watkins, we should have brought up as one of those picks. But
I'll tell you
at
what,
one- at-
there was a guy though they drafted again. This is 18 years or 20 years ago now. When they drafted Sean Andrews,
Yeah.
my high school self was like, this guy, he's got the size, he's got the athleticism, the lateral movement. This guy could be an all-pro for about 10 years. And
he was a great player.
he was
Hurt
on his
back.
way.
Yeah, hurt his back, and unfortunately, but that's way far back. I don't want to go back that far, but I think Howie would consider it later in the first round. Why not? Probably not at 22, but boy, I kind of feel like 22's no man's land for the Eagles. I really do.
That's why I keep saying in this draft, I feel like having 50 and 53 is way more important.
Yeah. 50 and 50. You better get a linebacker 50 or 53.
And I'll tell you what, if it ain't the kid from A&M or the Wallace kid from Kentucky, I think they got to find some way to get him. I don't know what round, but he's a good kid.
With Cooper, Edgerrin Cooper, to me, he's the best linebacker. He's certainly the best fit for big scheme. There's no way he makes it to 50, right?
No. Like you know what's funny, John? This is why I hate doing mock drafts because I got to do the simulator stuff. And I did like 7 different simulators, and somehow he was there at 50. And I'm like, there's no way, right? Like,
yeah. I love those simulators. It's tremendous. Obviously, it's fun for a lot of people. Was talking to Brookie the other day, and he loves them. He's addicted to them, and they do a great job. But man, yeah, there's guys that are just not going to be there, and the Cooper's one of them. I'm with you. I'm like, you can't take him at 22.
Oh, the Lions took a linebacker at 18 last year, and it seemed to work out well.
The Lions draft last year was great.
I loved it. And it was so unorthodox. Like, their best player in that draft was probably their 3rd pick, and that was Laporta.
Yeah, Sam Laporta. Well, no, it might have been Brian Branch.
That's right. Brian Branch went after Sam Laporta, right?
That's how good it was.
Yeah.
Wow. Because they had Branch, Laporta, and the first round picks, Jamar Gibbs, who was tremendous, they got criticized for that, and Jack Campbell, to the point where Brad Holmes was taking victory laps after they won the playoff game at the divisional round playoff game. That might have been after the season. He was taking victory laps.
I love how the Lions at the owners' meeting say, hey, look, we have our process. That's all we're concerned about. We're not concerned about what people think of what we do. And they didn't brag about the results. They just said, look, this is what we do. We're not really concerned about it. It wasn't even like you said, it wasn't a victory lap either, which I like. It's like, look, we don't care what you guys think. This is what we're doing.
And that's the way it should be. I mean, Krause kept getting me to rank the positions. Now, I can rank the positions for you where I feel the Eagles have the biggest need, but the Eagles don't do it like that. And they're smart for not doing it like that because they're not going to go at 22 and say, oh, maybe maybe Latu is there and he's cleared medically. And they say, well, we need a corner, so we have to take Cooper DeJean or Wiggins or somebody like that. And they're taking Latu. They're not taking a corner because you think they need a corner.
If they do take a corner, though, I'd love to see them take Wiggins if they have to take one.
Boy, he's so skinny. We went through this with and people will bring up with Devontae, but I mean, man, corner.
Rob Ellis and I were talking about this yesterday on WIP. Me, Rob, and Morgandi, and they're like, and they liked what I pointed out. Well, Bobby Taylor and Joey Vincent were skinny too. It worked out pretty well.
Yeah, but Bobby wasn't.
Yeah, Bobby was bigger up here.
Bobby was a big dude for a corner. Yeah, he's like 170 though. I mean, Troy Vincent's like, James Bradbury compared to
That's a good one. I like
Wiggins. Yeah, I would stay. Wiggins can run, and maybe he turns into a great player, and I hope he does. I root for everybody turn into a great player.
Yeah,
But
you know what I always say with this draft, John? Maybe it's just old school arrogance, but you can evaluate any prospect you want. Just tell me where they're going, and I can probably not make a good prediction on how they're going to be. Like Drake May, I'm rooting for him to be really good, but if he's going to Patriots, not exactly thrilled.
well, I mean, situation matters with quarterbacks. It matters for everybody, but it really matters for quarterbacks. And if you go to a situation, that's why the GM I was talking to said, "Tell me who's going to Minnesota." Um, and they're not going to be able to get Daniels, obviously, or we don't know. Somebody might like JJ McCarthy more than Drake May. It's interesting because Josh McCown is out there now as the quarterbacks coach. And he coached Drake May in high school with his own son. Remember that year?
Yeah.
He was only around for part of the week because he was going back to Charlotte to coach his kid in high school.
I have so much respect for a guy like that, by the way.
I love Josh McCown. But he was only here for a short period. But man, everybody told me that guy is going to be a future head coach. I mean, he just is so, and think about it. One of the criticisms I said, and the Eagles tried to hire him immediately as an assistant, but they wanted him to go the normal route, quality control. And Josh is like, somebody's going to pay me to be backup. And sure enough, somebody did.
Yeah, know your worth, right?
Yeah. And obviously you make more money that way. So he had a little bit left in the tank. And then it was Houston that got on the ground floor, and they interviewed him to be the head coach, and people just criticized the crap out of him for that. And I was like, I always said this, and I when I covered the NBA, I said it about Derek Fisher because I heard the same thing when Derek Fisher got hired straight out of being a player. And I'm like, he played 18 years or 19 years. In the case of McCown, same thing. He played 18.
And he was a point guard.
Yeah, he was a point guard. In the case of McCown, he played 18 years in every offense imaginable, Jeff. Who knows more about offensive football than Josh McCown?
The guy caught passes at one point in his life.
Yeah.
In a meaningful game.
Whomever, and I think he's going to be a head coach at some point. And
by
the way, it's going to happen really quickly if Minnesota, whoever they take, turns into a good quarterback early in their career. He's going to be a head coach really, really quickly. So keep an eye on Josh McCown, but I digress. When you bring up specifically linebacker with this team, that's the one team where I said Howie's done a very good job draft proofing this roster, I think, except linebacker.
Yeah, I would agree. They don't like we said, they don't need a corner. They don't need an edge rusher. They don't need an offensive but linebacker. And I go into the year looking at it's going to be probably the Kobe Dean and Devin White. Yeah, you need something there.
Boy, that would be ballsy going into a season with Nakobe Dean and Devin White, especially this team is considered, and most people consider them a legitimate contender. And then, think of it from the standpoint of you're a play away from having to play Oren Burks, probably. Oren Burks would be ahead of Ben Van Sumeren.
By the way, Oren Burks is a really under the radar good sign.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. In fact, I feel more comfortable with their third linebacker than their first or second linebacker. Good special teams player. You saw him get forced into action in the Super Bowl. It won't be too big for him, but they need help at linebacker.
badly. I still think they kind of need some help at safety, but they can fix that in the draft. They could. There's still some good safeties on the free agent market, so I'm not as concerned. But linebacker, when you're banking on Devin White to be 2020 Devin White, and everybody's telling me he's so far removed from that, I like the kid. I'm going to be rooting for him like crazy to turn his career around. But you just can't leave Devin White on an island. He's not going to succeed.
Yeah, I mean the contract tells you a lot, right? 1 year, 4 million, 3.5 guaranteed. I mean, there's 31 other teams out there. It's not like he turned down a 4-year, $40 million contract to come to Philadelphia. I hate to break it to people.
Yeah.
So the contract tells you a lot.
John, I wanted to point this out too. So, I had some free time Saturday. It's a slow time around the league, let's be honest. And I wrote about what a Devontae Smith extension would look like. And it kind of turned around a bit because I wanted to add A.J. Brown to the mix. And I said, okay, so how does this affect A.J. Brown? I actually said it doesn't in terms of Devontae's contract, but the Eagles got to make a decision on A.J. Brown next year because the guaranteed money is gone.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be the Devontae contract. I think people are saying, why aren't they signing Devontae? It's kind of up to Devontae because the Eagles are kind of pigeonholed. I wrote about this at SI. They're kind of pigeonholed. They can't put him up ahead of AJ, right? They can't pay him more than $25 million.
And AJ's top 5 in the league right now. It's funny, John. So when I was looking at the top contracts, it's the elite guys. It's like, and you're
Tyreek,
Tyreek, AJ, Cooper Kupp. And then you get to like Michael Pittman. It's like, well, Devontae Smith's better than Michael Pittman.
I agree with that. But here's the thing about Devontae. If his agent is smart, and I think he is, I'm waiting for Jefferson and Chase. They're tied. Will raise all boats, and he will make more money if he just waits for those guys. Now, he might say, you know what? I love it here. 22 million is life-changing money with all that guaranteed, and say, let's do it and make it very team friendly. I think if that were the case, the Eagles would do it today.
And I think you would agree with me too. I think Devontae Smith really does like it here.
Oh yeah, I do. But I also think, why not wait? Why not, if you feel comfortable, wait for Jefferson, wait for Chase, and the tide will rise all boats because those guys are going to crack well over what Tyreek Hill gets, $30 million a year. So, and by the way, that's AJ in the future as well, because AJ is going to be even higher than. So I'm glad he went down that route, and make sure you follow Jeff at Jeff Kerr CBS. Does a tremendous job. Read him there. Covering the Phillies a little bit now, so you get some baseball involved.
I had Bryce Harper tell me on Friday. I asked him if he feels like it's a little pressure there, not if the team is pressing. He just looks at me and smiles and goes, "Yeah, for 14 games in, man." I'm like,
14 games in, yeah. Well, Philadelphia has, and Bryce knows that, Philadelphia has a football mentality, so every game is life and death.
It's funny because he knows I know that, but that's what I like about a lot of baseball players. They respect the fact that you ask it because because these guys aren't available every day. So you got to ask it when you can. And, he gave the good smile because I know but I got to say it.
And, hopefully the Phillies can make a deep run this year. Hopefully the Sixers get out of the play-in round. So,
by the way, John, I wanted to ask you this. Did you agree with a lot of these teams kind of tanking to avoid them?
I never believe in tanking, but I'm like, because I heard it from the Sixers fans' perspective as well. Well, you don't want to be in the bracket and same bracket as Boston. Well, yeah, if you, if your only goal is getting out of the second round, which maybe it is because they haven't been able to do that in quite a long time, but you're going to have to beat them eventually.
Yeah. Well, the Sixers really weren't going to get them unless A, B, and C happened, and neither happened. So they played. I mean,
I would have liked, if I were the Sixers, to get the hell out of the play-in. I don't
yeah,
care what everybody
and
thinks.
I think that's what they wanted, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. Everybody thinks, well, they'll get out of that. Well, all they got to do is lose 2 games. And, you know,
I mean,
Joel sprains an ankle in the first couple minutes and they're done. So,
I will say this for them: the Knicks getting the 2 seed might be the best thing to happen to them if they can beat Miami, because I think that city is so desperate for that franchise to win. They
oh,
are
I know.
they
I
are
know.
talking themselves into their. I actually heard someone say to me, "They're going to beat the Sixers in 5 games." I said, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah, I know a lot of Knicks fans. They have been long suffering Knicks fans since the days of Patrick Ewing and John Starks. Um, yeah, the Sixers will beat that team if they get there.
Yeah,
Got to
they got to
get
get
there.
there first. I
Got to
agree.
get there first.
And we all know Miami. It's playoff Jimmy is
Playoff
playoff
Jimmy's tough,
Spolstra.
man. Playoff Jimmy, yeah, playoff Spolstra.
But I will say this: it just from talking to people who cover the Sixers on a regular basis, just being at some of these games as a season ticket holder, that vibe has been completely different since Embiid came back. It's like, all
Well,
right, we got our MVP back. Let's go.
well, yeah, but best ability is availability. Great
Yeah.
man once said that, and that's always an issue
I
with.
believe Jordan Max says that too.
Yeah. Uh Joel Embiid, unfortunately, a lot of issues when it comes to being available. And hopefully you don't have that lull in the playoffs where he misses a game because of some and then comes back and he's not the same. And has haunted the Sixers for a number of seasons. But you brought up, and I'll leave it there. And thanks. I always leave you too long, and I apologize, Jeff, but you're always fun to talk to.
I don't work till the afternoon, John. So feel free to talk away.
You brought up Devontae and the contract and AJ and the impending contract. Does that put receiver outside the box thinking at 22 potentially? Especially you're talking Thomas from LSU. I would say
I love Brian
specifically
Thomas.
might fall to that spot. Do you have to consider him at that point?
I think you should. But I think I think it would excite the fan base because you're going to have Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, and Brian Thomas for at least a year. But I'll tell you what. How about Ricky Pearsall in the second round? Did you take him?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. I do say in that type of instance, certainly with Thomas, and even so with Pearsall, because Paris Campbell isn't the answer as the third receiver,
and Devontae Parker, I don't think he's making the team.
No, and I don't even think Devontae's more the backup for the outside guys. He's not going to play in the slot. So, but at some point, and Nick Sirianni always calls it a good problem, and I always say, Jeff, good problem. The word problem is still in the actual definition. So you got to make Saquon happy. You got to make AJ happy. You got to make Devontae happy. You got to make Dallas happy. Now you got to throw a big time receiver in the mix as well. That's making things difficult for Kellen Moore. It's a good problem, but not necessarily the best problem.
By the way, Jalen and Saquon working out together this offseason.
Yeah, why not?
I'll play them.
No. And you're obviously a Penn State guy. I've talked a lot about Saquon. Look, I don't get it from the perspective of the Eagles and how they typically do business. And I've been covering this team too long. I think they went out of their comfort zone. But if it works, great.
Yeah, if you get a Super Bowl out of it, I think it's and they can say whatever they want. Oh, we always believe in. Look at the guys we had in our history. Brian Westbrook. Last played here 10 years ago. Come on, guys.
Well, what bothers me about that, it shouldn't. Howie can do what he wants, but that's bullshit because he's part of the reason this league has devalued that position.
He started the trend.
Yeah, and they always like when they start trends. And why don't that? I would have more respect for them if they just said, you know what? Now people have gone too far and we're going to go back in the other direction.
Yeah, we're going to set a trend that we stopped.
Yeah, because people have taken it too far.
This is
I
what if I was Howie, someone would ask me that about my history of running backs. I said, look, we just feel like this guy's a game changing player. He was, and you can't say he was misused, but we liked the player that much. We were willing to just kind of change our whole approach.
Well, I lied. I'm keeping you one more. Here's the thing, because I got to cover Randy Moss, and talking to Kelsey about Fletcher. Kelsey said Fletcher and Jason Peters were the two players he played with that could succeed in any scheme, regardless of philosophy, coaching. They would be successful. I think you should have added Lane and AJ, but that's a different conversation. He said those are the two players. There are certain guys. I got to cover Randy, John Randall, players like that. They succeed no matter what. Even at wide receiver, where by definition you need a vehicle to get you the football. If you're that good, you're going to show up. Saquon didn't do that too often in New York. He did it as a rookie, and he had a pretty good season in 2022, but it wasn't great.
My counterpoint is the Giants' offensive line has been one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen.
But I saw Adrian Peterson. I should have brought him up. Adrian Peterson won the MVP in this league with Christian Ponder playing quarterback and an average offensive line.
And he carried that team on his shoulders.
Yeah. So
I loved Adrian Peterson, by the way. They last week they had on NFL Network had on like top games from his rookie year. I'll never forget that game against the Chargers.
Chargers? Yeah, 296, I believe.
Yeah. I remember what's a funny part of that game? I think it was Camardi, wasn't it? Didn't he have like a return field goal for a touchdown like before the half or something?
Yeah.
That was one of the more
Brad
exciting
Childress kicking a long field goal. Moron, Brad Childress. But no, I like Brad. No, I'm with you. But I think difference makers are difference makers no matter what. But you don't have to be a difference maker. You can just be a really good player. So we'll see how it shakes out. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for the time. At Jeff Kerr CBS does a tremendous job. Great guy. We'll have him on leading up to the draft, after the draft. Jeff is one of our staples. Thanks, bud. Talk to you soon. Hopefully I'll see you down there soon because, we're going to get some player availability coming up. We'll get some Howie Roseman pre-draft availability coming up. So things are ramping back up. Get excited.
I'm excited for the draft. I can't wait till it's over, but I'm one of those people, when it hits, it hits. And
it's a fun 3 days.
It really is.
Getting there is not so fun sometimes.
Now all I got to do is get the NFL to actually give me their broadcast schedule. Because I do work for a broadcast partner. I would like the schedule when the other networks get the schedule. NFL, can you do that? So I can at least type it in and have it ready to go when you tell me to release it?
All right, buddy. Well, we're getting in the weeds with the NFL, but the NFL does what the NFL wants because they can. Guess what? We didn't even get to Isaiah Rodgers. I should have gotten to that, but, maybe we'll see if he'll ever be reinstated, but something to talk about down the road.
Yeah, before I leave, when do you think that would happen by now?
I would think it would happen by April 15th today, the offseason.
Yeah.
That was the date I was looking at, and it hasn't happened. So, and I asked Brian McCarthy about it yesterday. No news. So we'll see what's going on there eventually.
It's been really bad.
Yeah.
Because Calvin Ridley was reinstated almost immediately.
Yeah. It's weird, the timing on these. There's no trend, so you can't figure it out.
Yep.
At Jeff Kerr CBS, Jeff, you doing the Phillies this week, today?
I'm not doing them today, so I'm doing them tomorrow. I'm going to Sixers Wednesday. I might do the Phillies Wednesday, too.
All right, all over the place. So you'll see Jeff Kerr out there. And you'll see him next week here leading up to the draft. And then we'll get him post-draft to talk about all things Eagles. Thank you, Jeff. We got to get to a break. I've gone way over. People probably yelling at me, but hey, it's always fun to talk with Jeff Kerr and people who are very invested in this particular team in the NFL. More Birds 365 after the break.